What's better than finding quality candidates? Finding them instantly. For a powerful hiring partner, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Long gone are the days of spending hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like the Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/manifest to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/manifest. Indeed.com/manifest. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. In keeping with the theme of everything that we are talking about today, I wanted to talk about a partner that I adore and use pretty much every day and have found immense value in, and that is AG1. So I take AG1 by Athletic Greens almost every day, if not every day. And I started AG1 because I wanted to really focus, one, on my gut health, but two, it makes me feel really, really healthy. I love taking AG1 before my runs. I feel like I get energy, and I know that I'm taking all of the prebiotics and probiotics that my body and my gut needs, and I feel so much better throughout the day. So if you want to take ownership of your health, today is a good time to start. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/manifest. That's athleticgreens.com/manifest. Check it out. You know what's so crazy about almost being 25 is that I'm still using the doctors that I went to when I was like 10. And, it's like time for me to grow up and find doctors that listen to what I want and really understand me. And I don't have to go to the same doctors that I've been going to my whole life just because they're who like my parents used to go to or tell me to went to. You know what I mean? Like it's time that I start finding doctors of my own, and that is where ZocDoc comes in. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who are patient reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them and treat almost every condition under the sun. So if ZocDoc sounds like something that is right for you, then you should go to ZocDoc.com/manifest and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today, and many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/manifest. ZocDoc.com/manifest. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Manifest with Tori DeSimone. I'm your host, Tori DeSimone, and I am so excited for today's podcast because I have a guest on today, and you guys know that I don't have guests on frequently, and I've been making it more of an effort lately to have very intentional guests on that really align with everything that we talk about on the podcast. And I really want to bring on local guests as well. People that have a passion and want to spread a message and just have something really valuable to say. That's the people that I want on Manifest, and someone that really aligns with everything that we talk about on the show and will really add value and light a fire within you guys listening. And that is everything that today's guest embodies. I'm so happy to bring on my good friend, Ashley. And her and I have known each other for the past couple of years. She manages a spin studio in the area. And just through the spin industry, we met years ago. I want to say like back in 2018 or 2019, so almost 4 to 5 years ago, we knew of each other, and then we met, and we've always kept in touch. And today I had the pleasure of having her on the show, and we got to chatting afterwards, and she's just so amazing, such a stand-up girl, and you guys, I think, will really love what we talk about in today's episode. About 2 years ago, I'd say, Ashley really started posting on her Instagram, which is at Wellness Mind Body, about food and whole food, proper nutrition, and local farming as of recently. And she just started coming out with an ebook. And I have texted her a couple times, like throughout the past year or so, saying, like, I want to learn more about what you're posting. Like, how can I get started? And then about a month and a half ago, I'd say, she started releasing an ebook. And when she released an ebook, I was like, I want her on the podcast. She is just a wealth of knowledge. And while we were chatting today, I was just constantly impressed with everything that she had to say. She's so passionate about this topic and so knowledgeable about this topic. And I just think you guys are really going to love it. We talk about diet versus nutrition. We talk about farming, which stay with me because it's so fascinating. We talk about farming, we talk about daily wellness practices, and we just dive really deep into today's episode. And I just loved everything about it. And I was so happy to have her on. So, yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's jump into today's episode with myself and Ashley. Hi, Ash. Thanks for coming on.
Hi, Tori. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I'm so excited when I reached out to you a couple weeks ago to come on. You were like so down, so ready to go. And I'm just so grateful that you're here.
I'm still so humbled by you just wanting me to be here to talk about it today. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. I'm very excited to have you on today. And why don't you tell the people a little bit about yourself, a little elevator pitch, if you will.
Okay, so I am a fitness instructor. I actually teach spin, and I also manage a fitness studio in the local area. That's predominantly my full-time job, but then I have loads of hobbies on the side, and a lot of those hobbies and creative avenues that I've gone down have allowed me to kind of look into, I think, what we're predominantly talking about today, and that's local food and local communities and how to get involved and kind of bring all of that together into the same space. But I would say health and wellness is like my main, I don't know, like, I hate this part.
Thing. I know. Right before I was like, so what do you want me to call this? And she was like, that's the hard part.
Yeah, it is hard to put it into, like a phrase or whatever. But I would like really just call it healthy living is pretty much how I try to work professionally and like live my life, non-professionally as well.
Yeah. So how'd you get into all of this?
So I was predominantly into fitness first. That really was my first avenue into anything having to do with health. I grew up as an athlete. And then when I was in college, I was working, and going to class and stuff like that. And right around my part-time job at the time, a spin studio opened, and I was like, oh, wow, like, let me go over. I loved fitness at the time, and I thought I always wanted to be like a personal trainer. And a couple of us went over to take a class, and we just really, really loved it. So that was like my first professional foot that I stepped into the fitness space. And I've been there ever since working. But that was my basis. That provided like a baseline of what I presumed to be what health was. And then I think over the last 3 years, especially, I got more into nutrition and, what that means for me and how different it can be for each person, because my main job is to get people healthier. And then I was also going through a lot the last 3 years, like through the pandemic. But I think the main driving force between getting me into where I am now is I had really, really awful anxiety. I think it was, the first year of the pandemic, we were all so scared, like nobody knew what it was or how it impacted our health. And I actually did get COVID, like the alpha. Like that sounds so weird, but there's like so many versions now. So it was, the first year that it hit everybody. And I got COVID, and it was such like the actual illness didn't do anything to me. Like I had a very mild cold, I did lose my sense of smell and taste. But besides that, it was very mild. I wouldn't have even known that I was sick. But I did get tested, and it was like 2 weeks being alone in my apartment and just worrying about my health and looking at the screens like all day long. I was just like, I really do think up until that point, I never really dealt with anxiety before. And then I think that ended up having some, like traumatic, just, I guess, residual effects from just being isolated and being worried all the time. So then I think a couple months down the line, I started just like overthinking things and noticing that I had like more anxiety than I was used to, until it got to a really, really bad point where I was having like panic attacks, and I was, gathering like my roommate at the time. And I was like, you have to take me to the ER. Like, I think I'm having, like, I developed health anxiety, I think is really what happened. So, you know, I got to a point, and I actually really relate to what you said in your last podcast about flying. And you were just like, one day you were just like, I don't want to keep, feeling this way when I go to fly. I don't want to, I'm just done. I'm done with the anxiety. I'm done with feeling this way. It was like probably like my 15th panic attack. I was like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to feel this way anymore. So like, what am I doing, or what is it about my current environment that is making me, go down these destructive thought patterns and these paths that I'm on? And so one of the things I really like to do is research. So I just started researching a bunch of things. That's when I found Mark Hyman, and I found a lot of other, people that I look up to now. But one of the main things I learned that impacts the brain and, the receptors and how we just go through our life and how we think and our thought patterns was food. And I figured like, oh, a food is just, just eat your veggies, moderation, like sweets in moderation, all this stuff. Like it's not a big, it's not a big deal. But the more I looked into it, I really discovered, how impactful the right choices can be. Not only just mentally, but also like physiologically. Like it does kind of alter your brain chemicals, like depending what you're eating, the quality of what you're eating. That was a really long-winded way of saying like that's how I got into the food space. Yeah. And thinking so much about it. And it's hard to kind of think back to that time because you do so much growth in between then, like it's kind of like when you first start to do something and you're like, this is how it is right now. But then you have so many growth steps in between that it's hard for me to like remember back to, like the two years ago when I really started looking into all this stuff. But it was that initial, I need to heal myself. I need to get better. Let me look at what I'm doing. Because I know I'm moving. I know I'm exercising. I know I'm working out. I feel happy for the most part, except for, these bouts of anxiety. Something must not be right. And so let me at least look at my food first. And if there's other things I need to deal with, then I'll deal with that later. But first, let me look at this. And so once I started looking into that, I learned so much, not just about, nutrition, but also food and food quality and the food system. And so that's kind of how it all came about.
So you knew that food wanted to be the first thing you looked into? Or was it like you researched and then it kind of started pointing you in the direction of food?
I researched first. Okay. And then I kind of learned, certain deficiencies, certain vitamins, if you don't have enough of them, like can impact you in XYZ way. So that's kind of how I came about to that. So I definitely did the research first, and then it drew me to food.
Now I feel like there's so much information out there, especially when it comes to food. And not only is there so much, but it's also contradictory. Like 1 minute it's like apples are good for you. And then the next minute, like if you eat an apple, you're going to peel over and die. Oh, totally. So how do you differentiate between what's real, what should I listen to, what should I not? Or did it take you, 2-3 years to kind of figure it out for yourself? Where do you even start? Like it's such a huge topic to even dive into. It's daunting to start, and I think that's why a lot of people don't start.
Totally. I totally agree. I think, and I only know this looking back at it now, but the food and even, the diet industry, I think kind of overshadows the nutrition more so than anything else, because I think if we're all of different thought processes, then we can stay distracted longer, and we're not really focusing on like nutrition here as much as we are. This is the right way to eat. These are the right things to eat. Yeah, milk is good for you now, but cheese is awful for you next week. Like, whatever. I totally understand. It is really confusing. But one during my research, one of the organizations I found was super pivotal in helping me just like create a baseline of like what am I supposed to be eating just like as a human. Like let's take out like all these different ways you can identify with food, like I'm vegetarian, I'm carnivore, I'm whatever it is. Like I'm not even going to take that on. What is biologically healthy for a human being to eat based on evolution, not based on like a third party study that was double blind, like whatever the research articles say, but biologically and evolutionarily, what is healthy for a human to eat? That cleared up a lot for me. And I found this organization called the Weston A. Price Foundation. And this is extremely interesting. And they're still super pivotal in my journey and just like navigating the world today. But Weston A. Price was a Canadian dentist and in the 40s. And so he was actually one of the first people to link oral hygiene with physical health, and oral health with physical health. So he traveled around the world to different tribes and villages and cultures, and would find people with like vibrant, smiles, never needing any braces, no cavities, no, tooth decay. And they were also very happy, and they were very fit, and they were living well into their 90s with like great health span, and basically just like the epitomes of health. And so he used the rest of his life to kind of research that and see, what foods were they eating and what were they doing and what was, the main portions and aspects of their cultures that allowed them to live such vibrant, vital lives. And so later on, obviously he passed away, but his work is still, it's still available. You can get his books. But there was a nonprofit foundation that took all of his teachings, and basically they are doing activism basically in they call it food farming and the healing arts. So I do have to give them a lot of credit to what I know now, was from like their teachings. You can become a member, and they'll send you like quarterly journals, and it's really, really interesting. But it's based off of more, I would say, like an Eastern medicine way, holistic homeopathy way of just like living your life. And that cleared up a lot for me as far as food goes. And I think that was, and I know we talked like kind of before this, but like it unlocked a level of consciousness for me where I stopped looking at food as like black and white, and there's this type of food, and carrots are good for you now, but if you have too much broccoli next week, like whatever, the diet industry is always going to change, because at least not right now, the collective goal is not health. It's marketing. It's, so I am wary who I listen to now and what I listen to now. And I would encourage other people to not outsource so much of your decisions to outside sources, basically, people that are trying to get you to think a certain way, or this is bad or this is good. And I know that's hard to do, but the base of what I would ask myself is, what makes sense for a human to eat? What is actually healthy for me to eat, evolutionarily and biologically?
And what was the answer?
Yeah,
get deep. I want to hear everything.
Okay. Well, and I will say again, just like Weston A. Price traveled the world and he saw all these different cultures, there's going to be people who eat differently. So there's going to be people who would prefer not to get their protein from, animal foods. And there's going to be people who don't mind, so I definitely, no matter what I say, I'm not, hopefully telling anybody to eat a certain way. However, I think we can all agree, no matter how you identify with your diet, fresh food is best. So eating something that has a short shelf life, something that came from the earth in one way or another, or was integrated in nature in one way or another, is a great place to start. Prioritizing those foods. And I think that can consist of, I'm a huge fan of animal protein. So I do eat meat. I eat seafood. And, I eat eggs and some dairy and fruit and some vegetables that I've learned that don't bother my stomach, because I know that is also a thing. But I would prioritize, like nature-made foods. That's my personal opinion, because once you start prioritizing those foods, you will notice a big difference in many aspects, but especially, and this is one thing I don't think the diet industry ever talks about, and it's satiety. It's just feeling satiated and being like, okay, I just had a meal, and wow, yeah, I'm not thinking about my next meal for the next 2 hours. Like, I don't know how you feel, but especially being in the fitness space, like you have long days, and so you're eating. I was eating 1 minute and I was like, I can't wait to let's snack later. I can't wait to do this. And I didn't realize at the time, I just was like, this is how everybody eats. But once I started prioritizing satiating foods, I was like, okay, I eat this meal, I eat dinner, I'm good. And I don't think, like, food does not run my day anymore. And that's a whole different, obviously, topic, like just diet in general. But in terms of what I think is most important to prioritize, it's food from nature. That's what I would say.
I really like the distinction too that you keep coming back to, that it's nutrition versus like diet culture, which is huge, because I agree, like the diet culture is the one that keeps throwing things out there that's like, actually don't do this, but do this.
Right.
Absolutely. But nutrition has stayed constant forever.
Exactly.
Yeah. So recently you've also gotten into like making like sourdough.
Yes.
I just made my first loaf of sourdough bread the other day. Don't want to brag.
Oh my gosh, it's so exciting.
I have started my fridge.
Yes.
Yep. My friend Nikki, her and I got to talking, and she was like, oh, you should come over and make bread with me. And I was like, okay. So I went over, I made bread. I had no idea how long the process of making sourdough bread was. And I was like, I'm so sorry. Like, I have to go. So I have like all of her bowls and stuff that I have to give back to her. But this week you were posting about wraps. I think yesterday you were posting about wraps, right? And you made a sourdough wrap.
Right.
So I feel like that's just one example of how you can like take control over food and bread. And I mean, I didn't know this until I went over to Nikki's a couple weeks ago, but she was like, you can make pasta with sourdough. You can make cinnamon buns. You were posting yesterday about wraps. Like, you can make so much with your own like 2 hands.
Exactly.
And it's really cool. And I never thought about that.
Exactly. 100%. And that's, I think, where we are getting to. I think we're in a really pivotal time in history where we have all of these advances of like the modern technology, but yet we've almost like, I don't know, devolved to like stop doing a lot of these things ourselves. And that's like kind of my fear for the future, is if we don't find a way to toe the line between, modern advancements and still being very capable human beings. Like, I think if we do find the balance, we'll be set. But you have a lot more control over and that's a big thing for me. I always talk about autonomy over your own life. Like, you have a lot more control over what you ingest. And I don't just mean like food, like just in all aspects. But it does take a little bit of, research, and it takes a little bit of time. Yes. I do think that that's another big thing, that our food these days are built for convenience as opposed to, nourishment. Because you look at our modern life, like, we got to work, honey. We got to be like at the office. We got to be up early. We got to, be there for the kids and grab them after school and all this. Yet, like, we have really no downtime, which is much different than maybe like, even, I don't know, like 80 years ago, 60 years ago. Life was a little bit different. So we had a little bit more time, and you could spend like that day baking bread, and you could like, now we're like, how long is this going to
I
take?
know, that was me. I was like, Nikki, I'm so sorry. In keeping with the theme of everything that we are talking about today, I wanted to talk about a partner that I adore and use pretty much every day and have found immense value in, and that is AG1. So I take AG1 by Athletic Greens almost every day, if not every day. And I started AG1 because I wanted to really focus, one, on my gut health, but two, it makes me feel really, really healthy. I love taking AG1 before my runs. I feel like I get energy, and I know that I'm taking all of the prebiotics and probiotics that my body and my gut needs, and I feel so much better throughout the day. I feel like I'm ready to go. I am doing something good for my body. I tend to not get like an afternoon crash, and I just feel overall much better when it comes to taking my AG1. I heard about AG1 from multiple podcasts, and I wanted to give them a try for myself. And once I started, I just felt so good that I wanted to keep going. And then coincidentally, they became a sponsor of the podcast. So I am just thrilled. AG1 by Athletic Greens is made of 75 super high quality vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients that deliver benefits like mood, immune system, and sleep support, sustained energy, and so much more. And you get all of that with just one scoop. The nutrients, the gut health, everything that supports my whole body thrive and cover all of my nutritional bases with just one scoop of AG1 by Athletic Greens. I also really like that it is delivered monthly, so I don't have to think about it, and it comes in travel packs. And when I was in Idaho last week, I brought the travel packs with me, and I also like to give them to friends because a lot of times my friends want to try AG1, so I'll give them a travel pack, and they love it, and they always end up ordering it. So if you want to take ownership of your health, today is a good time to start. Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/manifest. That's athleticgreens.com/manifest. Check it out. What's better than finding quality candidates? Finding them instantly. For a powerful hiring partner, you need Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Long gone are the days of spending hours on multiple job sites looking for candidates with the right skills when you can do it all with Indeed. Find top talent fast with Indeed's suite of powerful hiring tools like the Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. If you're like me and you love the instant gratification and hate waiting, Indeed's US data shows over 80% of Indeed employers find quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment that they sponsor a job. I've used Indeed for all facets of my business, and what I love the most is their Instant Match. The candidates that you apply through Instant Match are 3 times more likely to apply to your job than candidates who only see your job in a search, which is according to the US Indeed data. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates whose resumes on Indeed match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. So Indeed does all the hard work for you, like sponsor a job, and boom, Instant Match shows you candidates whose resumes on Indeed fit your job description immediately after you post. So with Instant Match, you can start hiring fast. Join over 3 million businesses worldwide using Indeed to hire great talent fast. Indeed knows that when you're doing everything for your company, you can't afford to overspend on hiring. Visit Indeed.com/manifest to start hiring right now. Just go to Indeed.com/manifest. Indeed.com/manifest. Terms and conditions apply. Cost per application pricing not available for everyone. Need to hire? You need Indeed. You know what's so crazy about almost being 25 is that I'm still using the doctors that I went to when I was like 10. And, it's like time for me to grow up and find doctors that listen to what I want and really understand me. And I don't have to go to the same doctors that I've been going to my whole life just because they're who like my parents used to go to or tell me to went to. You know what I mean? Like it's time that I start finding doctors of my own, and that is where ZocDoc comes in. ZocDoc is the only free app that lets you find and book doctors who are patient reviewed, take your insurance, and are available when you need them and treat almost every condition under the sun. There is no more doctor roulette or like looking all over the internet for questionable reviews. With ZocDoc, you have a trusted guide to connect you to your favorite doctor that you haven't even met yet. What I really like most about ZocDoc is that I can read reviews from other patients. Like when you go on Yelp or you're looking for a website, or I recently did this when I booked an Airbnb, I looked at the reviews of what everyone had to say about the restaurant or about the Airbnb, and I booked solely on the reviews. And typically, when you go to book a doctor, there's like not reviews. ZocDoc has reviews that I trust and really let me know like if this doctor is what I'm looking for or not. You can choose from thousands of patient reviewed doctors and specialists, browse doctor profiles, and upload and verify your insurance information to make sure that your insurance is accepted to get the care that you need. So if ZocDoc sounds like something that is right for you, then you should go to ZocDoc.com/manifest and download the ZocDoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today, and many are available within 24 hours. That's ZocDoc.com/manifest. ZocDoc.com/manifest. To give people some takeaways from the episode, what does a typical day of eating for you look like? Like if someone loves what we're talking about and they're like, I want to start diving deeper into this. I want to start eating like this, finding proper nourishment for myself. What do you typically eat in a day?
Yes. So my schedule definitely impacts this a lot because most mornings I'm up very early, and I have to be at work at like 5. So I might not eat right away, but I will try to eat somewhere in the morning, morning time, maybe like 9 or 10 a.m. But my biggest go-to would be like animal protein, some sort of either chicken from the night before, or, and I know that sounds weird as like a breakfast, but I stopped thinking about like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm like, I have 2 meals a day and I just make sure that I get what I need out of both of them. So I don't really like label them anymore as like, this is not a breakfast food or whatever. But I will have definitely eggs. Eggs are in the mix every single time, like 2 eggs. And then maybe like a piece of chicken or like a hamburger patty. It's really weird and it probably will gross a lot of people out that I eat like this. And then like I'll have like fruit on the side. It just depends what it is. I don't eat, a huge amount of food, but that's again the thing with satiating foods. You don't need a lot on the plate, but there has to be depth to what you're eating. I think that's really what it is. And so especially nowadays in the US, like what is predominantly our breakfast foods? They're either super processed or they are like heavy carbohydrates. And I absolutely think carbs have a place and carbs aren't not just like bread and stuff like that and pasta. It's also fruit and it's also vegetables. So I think it's another thing that people get confused about with like diet culture verbiage and stuff like that. But I would say first meal, prioritize protein, and not only protein, but an absorbable form of protein. And so your body can easily recognize, again, nature-made foods. And so it doesn't have to work as hard to break down the protein that you're eating, as opposed to if you're eating, this protein powder that might not be super, soluble and available for your body. So that's what's a key term that people will kind of throw around. And if people are interested, bioavailability or something when it's bioavailable, it's your body's like ready to use it right away. And is that not what we want from our food? You don't want to eat like a huge bagel that's, and I'll say a processed bagel because you can make sourdough bagels and they're fire. But you don't want to make your body work any harder than it's doing all these amazing things without us even knowing. And if you can just make sure that you're giving it clean fuel, that's ready to go and ready to use, you are going to operate at an optimal level. And so that's what I try to do for that first meal is like give myself some good protein that my body can break down right away. And then, some fruit, some carbs that will keep me going throughout the day. That's pretty much it. And it's, again, really boring, but I pretty much do the same thing for dinner. So it's like it's not as like fun as it probably seems from the outside, but but that's the thing. Again, it went from me thinking about food all the time and what was I going to make and what was I going to do to like, okay, this is just something I do. Like I just eat and I get on with like the rest of my life that I have time for now, and I don't get me wrong. I love to cook and we make a lot of things at home, and so like that's super fun too. But bioavailable ingredients are definitely what I would say if somebody was looking to kind of nourish themselves better. Look into nature-made foods that are easy for your body to absorb.
I get a lot of questions from listeners where, they are in a relationship or they live with their partner or they live with a roommate and like their partner doesn't eat the same way that they do. Mm-hmm. Does your fiance eat like this as well?
He does.
Or did you convert him?
So he actually is an angel because when we first met, I was a vegetarian, which is
okay,
not on the current brand at all. But and so I hope that helps people know, like, once you can try things and you don't have to like identify in like that way your whole life. Basically, totally. You can totally change. You can totally evolve. I was vegetarian because, it doesn't really matter, but I thought that was what I needed at the time. And so he was a great sport. I was still making like veggies and fresh food, but when I made tofu, he was eating it with me, even though like the poor thing, like, I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen him in real life. He's like a very large man who needs a lot of like protein. So he was eating like, all that stuff with me. But I think at one point, again, when I kind of was like, okay, I'm done feeling like super anxious all the time. I want to feel energized. I want to stop like sleeping in the middle of the day. He was like, great. Okay. So we're going to go back to how he always ate. He actually ate very similar to how I eat now. And I mean, he calls it like the bachelor diet. Like he literally just would eat protein and like some veggies. Like, so I was like, I got very, very lucky because I know that's not always the case. He's very health conscious. He's like the supplement king. So I'm very lucky in that aspect, but I also recognize that that's not always the case for people. And it is tough. So I think we talked about this in the very beginning before we even like started recording, but it's again a level of consciousness. And so if you were like, what would you say to somebody that is maybe in like family or a relationship that is not super like open to this type of eating or just like changing their habits in general, because that's very real. And I talk to a lot of people like that. What I would say is just maybe like encourage them to try a meal with you. Try a meal with you and then note how they feel afterwards. So, and I think people who care about you are going to try things if you're genuinely like, hey, I really want to do this. I think it's going to impact, my health and my life for the better and yours. I'm sure of it. Like you have good people in your life, they're going to be like, okay, like I'll try it or I'll give it a shot. And, even if they don't, it's just not giving up on them and not giving up on the lifestyle, because the more you try and the more you do it, one meal at a time, that's really what I say, like one meal at a time, notice how you feel. If you feel yourself clear-headed, then you're not going to, maybe go back to having like a whole bag of Doritos. Or maybe when you do have a whole bag of Doritos, you're like, man, I feel like really, I don't know, like foggy and I feel like tired. I have a migraine, I have a headache. Note that. Note when you don't feel good and what you had and what was in your day. Again, ingesting whatever it was, not just food, but, did I sleep well? Did I do all these things that impacted how I feel? So really just taking it step by step. With, social media and phones and everything, we think like, okay, I'm going to start this today and I need to be like the guru tomorrow. It's like, that's not the case at all. This is your life. This isn't social media. This isn't, your Instagram page. This is your life. And so when you think about it in terms of this is my longevity. This is me playing with my kids well into my, 50s, 60s. This is me being there for my grandkids. This is my health. This is not a fad. I think it holds a little bit more weight.
I agree. There was this one podcast episode that I talk about a lot with Dr. I don't know if he's a Dr. Huberman. Is he a doctor?
Yeah.
Does he go by it?
PhD. Yeah, because
okay.
he professes.
Okay, professor. We're both like obsessed with him. Him and Dr. Pita Atia. I always feel like I say his last name wrong. Anyway, they had an episode, I'm sure you listened to it, where they talked about the last 10 years of your life.
Yes.
And how you should live your whole life for those last 10 years. Like, do you want to be able to get up off the ground by yourself? Do you want to be able to play with your grandkids?
100%.
Like, all those things are so important. And the way that you live the last 10 years of your life is by how you live the prior 80 years, 90 years,
right?
So I'm glad that you brought that up. And also the thing with brain fog, you don't even know you have it until you're clear of it. Would you agree?
Yes, totally.
It's wild. Like, I used to hear people be like, oh, brain fog. Like, I had such brain fog. I'm like, I don't know what anyone is talking about with this like brain fog. And then before we started recording, I was telling Ashley that I just feel so much more calm these days. And I look back and I don't know if it was necessarily brain fog or just a lot of anxiety or just like constant, like I was just always in fight or flight mode. But like the peace that I feel now and like the mental clarity that I feel now versus 6 months ago, it's wild. And I would imagine brain fog is very similar.
Yes.
And it's just a cool like biomarker almost of
absolutely
progress.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
So I want to ask, where do you source your food? Because I would, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that you don't eat like Purdue chicken or stuff like that. So like, where do you get your food? And I also want to mention that Ashley has an ebook out. Are there 2 parts of it out right now?
Yes, there's 2 parts.
Okay. So the first part was like an introductory into what your ebook's going to be. And then your second part is very deep into farming and local food systems. I want to hear like as deep as you want to go on that. Okay. So like, where do you source your food and how did you become passionate about local farming and things of that nature?
Okay. So these are layers that have been unpeeled. So yeah, the first layer was kind of learning what I should be eating. And then the second layer was the quality of those products. So I don't know if there was like a distinctive day. Like it's hard to think back and be like, there was one day where I started shopping at a farmer's market, but little things started to align in my life. And I had a friend who was like, hey, there's a farmer's market pretty close to us. Do you want to go with me? And I was like, oh yeah, I've been dying to go to one of those or whatever. And at the same time, I was kind of learning about the food system just in general and, where things come from. And I think probably more predominantly going to the farmer's market and talking to actual farmers and the people who run the markets, that was probably the most integral piece for me to recognize that, quality is a massive thing to think about as well. It's really important, I should say. So I go to a few different places, but one of the market that I went to that day and that I've continued to go to, it's called Growing Roots Farmers Market. And they have a few different locations there in, can I say, okay, they're in Malvern, and then they have some in Eagleview and Downingtown. There's a Westchester Growers Market in Westchester, obviously. But what I've also learned, because before I got into any of it, I was like, oh God, that's so hard to know. Like, when are they going to have a farmer's market? I'm never going to catch one. How do I know the people there? Am I just like buying things that I would buy at the store? It can be very overwhelming going into it, but these are really cool because they're always the same times. They're always the same days. So it's kind of like you can plan your trip to go and get what you need. And they pretty much always have the same vendors at them or very slightly different, but they all will frequent the same market. So that has been very easy. So you go to a market and you basically, depending on the market, you can go to their website. I'm sure they can show you who's like, you know, the vendors, the different producers that are going to be there, which farms, if they're organic farms, you know, if they're regeneratively raised animals, whatever it might be. So then you know who is going to these markets, and then you can plan into your schedule. Okay, I'm going to go and I'm going to get, like eggs here. I'm going to go get my meat here, whatever. And so that's where I've learned and met a lot of the producers that are in this area, was by going to those markets. So, and I can give you all the details so you can share it with everybody. But yeah, those are great. And right now they're on a winter schedule, so they're bi-weekly, but in April they'll go to every single week, which is really awesome and accessible for people, hopefully. So, that's predominantly where I get the big stuff, I'd say, like, meat and eggs and stuff. But then I also will supplement with Kimberton Whole Foods, which is, they are crushing it, and they're like opening all these different locations. I think they just put a new one in Phoenixville, I think, or Devon,
really?
or something. Yeah, there's a huge, they're opening a bunch around now. I have like there's one in Downingtown. I go there a lot.
I love that one.
Yeah,
It's
a
so
little.
cutie.
I'm like, we need more space.
It's so cutie.
It's really small. It's a cute little spot. But it's cool though, because it's over the last like year and a half, I've noticed it's been getting so crowded. And I'm like, this is awesome. People are kind of looking more into this and taking it more seriously. And Kimberton, for anyone who's not familiar, is a multi-generational grocer. So they've been around for many years, but they will source from local farms. So you have, obviously some aspects of like a normal grocery store. You can still get like Primal Kitchen stuff. You can still get things that you might get at Giant. But in terms of like dairy and maybe some cheese and, little products here and there, meat especially, they will actually source from surrounding farms, which is really nice, because then you can still buy them at market hours and not have to go to farmers markets. But you're still supporting that farmer. You're still supporting a local, integrity-based business that is very committed to getting quality food on your plate. And so that's probably the main two places that I get them from. Obviously, like will use like a subscription service sometimes. Like I've mentioned ButcherBox before. You just have to be like mindful of those. I try not to use that all the time, because it's nice if you're just getting into it, but there is also something called greenwashing, and it's kind of like, using these big brands that are catching on to the wave of like local food, and they're if you don't support the right ones, you just have to be careful with like where you're supporting, because sometimes it has the impact to really not be great for the local farm, because if people are ordering from them and not from your local farmer, then they might be out of business. Like it's something, it's like a hairy topic, but and you can cut that part out because I don't know.
I like it. I like it.
So but I'll use ButcherBox for things that I can't get, like scallops. Like, where am I going to get scallops from here?
So true.
So that's really good. And I like doing their seafood because it's wild caught. I can't catch any wild salmon. I don't even know if that exists here. So
You can't get it in Marsh Creek?
Oh man. So that is, there's definitely places around, and there's tons of maps, and like, again, using the technological age, like let's use it for the right purposes. Let's look at, there's so many maps and different websites you can go to that will, if you plug in like your zip code, they will tell you, here's all the farms around you. I just found out there's like a buffalo farm. They sell buffalo milk. I was like, what? I didn't even, what?
Have you tried it?
No, I haven't, but I told Vontae, I was like, "Wait, do you know that they have buffalo milk? Like, I didn't even know that was a thing."
Me either.
So, and that's like pretty close to here. And so if you look at these like websites, they'll show you what's around you. So even if you don't live in this area, I guarantee there's still something around you that you can, gain access to. So, but I know one of your questions was like the farming and like getting into the nitty gritty of it. So again, another layer that has been peeled back. And I will accredit a lot of this to, I did see that. Did you watch the Netflix? It was a documentary. It's called Kiss the Ground.
I've seen excerpts from it. I've never watched the whole thing in entirety.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm a sucker for documentaries because they're supposed to be. They're compelling and,
Right.
they are super informational.
I'm gonna write
Um,
it down though, so I watch it.
yeah. But one thing again and we should all try to do when we're ingesting any type of information is just look into the people that are sharing it and, their motives and who they are and if they have any, conflict of interests involved, because there's a lot of documentaries on there, and so I looked into this one before I really even watched it, and it's just groups of environmentalists, and so obviously they're trying to get you on their side, but I'm like, I'm okay with being on their side.
Totally.
They're looking out for us and the planet, and so if no one's watched it yet, I genuinely think this is a incredible film. It's about an hour, I think, maybe a little bit over. But it really dives into the importance of soil health. And if you think back to when we started this podcast, like we were talking about, like what to eat on our plates. And now we're at soil health. And you don't, like, that's how deep it goes. Like food goes so deep. And like, no pun intended, it literally is like soil deep. So this documentary kind of opened my eyes to farming in general, and our practices and how it's impacting, again, not only the planet but our health as well. So it's just like any other living being. You have a living human, you want to treat it the best, you want to give them all the right food, you want to give them the right environment, all the love. If you have a dog or a cat, you want to give them all the right food, give them all the love. And so when we think about soil, which is where all of our food comes from, you want to give it the best health. You want to give it all the love that it needs. You want to give it the right ingredients so that it can thrive. And so it produces the best foods so then that we can in turn feed the world. And so when you have, layouts of land that is not being taken care of or is being what, most would say extorted. It's just kind of being used for profit. You have a much less or a less quality of food coming from those types of lands. And not only is that not ideal for us and our health, but also our planet. We in the film, and I don't want to give too much away because they did a great job, and I really think you should go watch it. But they mention that we have about 60 harvests left.
That is terrifying. When I read The Pegan Diet by Dr. Mark Hyman, he mentioned that in the beginning of his book, and like it's terrifying to wrap your head around that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I know. And for, again, those unfamiliar, that's 60 years. So you harvest once a year. So 60 years stands between food and no food.
So then what happens?
So,
and can you like add that? Can we get any back? Like,
right. So, and I'm sure we've all seen, A Lifetime on Our Planet, all these different, awesome films that are really just trying to get people fired up about doing their part to send us in the right direction. Now, I don't like calling it like saving the planet or like, because this planet, life on the planet is going to continue regardless. It's just, are we and is our life going to be able to sustain on this planet with no food and with no air and with no water and stuff like that? So, what I would assume happens, and I'm not an expert. But we would turn more to this bio lab food that we are currently ingesting, and we're seeing. I mean, we're just, everybody is anxious. Everybody has, digestive issues. Like, I'm generalizing, obviously, but we're dealing with a lot of like inflammation and chronic illnesses and stuff like more than ever before. And I wholeheartedly believe that's the food that we're eating. But if we don't want to get to that point, and do I think that we can turn it around? Absolutely. I mean, again, this regenerative farming, and I know we haven't really like talked about it too much yet, but a lot of this comes back to that. And so regenerative farming is feeding the planet, while working with nature and replenishing what we're taking out. And I think that's a big distinction, because it's unrealistic to think that we're just going to exist here without taking anything out of the planet. A brief overview, and it's a complex process, but a lot of it, again, is done naturally just in nature. And so what the farmers do is they just enhance the natural procedures that are already happening. So, some of the main differences between industrial farming, which is where a lot of our food comes from, I think I just read a stat, it was like 96% of the US food comes from like corn, soy, wheat, animal confinement. Like that's 96%.
That's terrifying.
Yeah. Like that is wild. So, and again, those farms are industrial farms. So the difference between industrial farming and regenerative farming is, again, industrial is going to be extorting the land and the animals for profit. Or to, I don't like to think that everyone's evil in that business. Like their goal is to feed people. And so they're getting food to plates. But is it the best food? Is it the food that we can feel good about and, nourish our bodies with and feel good about giving back to the planet with? No, I don't think so. But regenerative farming focuses on, and I can name some like real, like I can get real nerdy. It just
Go
depends.
for it.
So we can start with just like, like planting seeds, right? Like seeding. Industrial farming is going to use heavy tilling. And so tilling is like, there are those big plows that will pretty aggressively, harshly dig into the soil. And it's for a purpose. It's to aerate and it's to germinate, and it's so, the seeds grow and they can put fertilizer in and stuff like that. It's basically to expedite the process of growing. And so they do that. And then on top of that, because the soil is like, brittle and it needs fertilizer, and it's not thriving with all these beneficial microbes and organisms, it's needs pesticides, and it needs, if it needs it, that's a different question. But again, to expedite the process, it's going to be sprayed with pesticides and herbicides to keep out weeds and anything that would slow down the growth or the production rate. So then not only is this food coming from, less than ideal soil, so like brittle soil, and I would even go as far as to say sick soil, but then it's being sprayed with these synthetic chemicals on top of it. And one of the most jarring things is, have you ever like seen videos of people spray pesticides? Why are they all suited up?
I know.
Why are they all suited up? But it's cool for us to eat.
I know.
That's scary.
It's not normal.
Yeah, no. So, and again, I'm not like, I really hope I'm not here to, sway anybody which way. The only thing I would say at the end of this podcast, I hope people do, is just think more, think deeper. If something doesn't seem right, just look into it, just kind of do some research and then come to your conclusion. You don't have to take what I say, as like your new outlook, but there are some crazy things happening that I think we do need to kind of pay attention to. And so that's where a lot of our food is coming from. And then on top of it, you think about where these industrial farms are located, mostly in the Midwest. Obviously, again, there's outliers. They're all over the country. But then you think about this food that's already come from less than ideal soil. It's been sprayed with synthetic chemicals, and now it's getting shipped all the way to the East Coast from wherever, I don't, like, you guys know when you buy fruit, like it's, yeah. It's going to be, you have like 5 days to eat those avocados. It could be like 10 days before that avocado even gets to your plate, but it's still intact. It still looks green. It's still, and so you're like, there's something different. Like this food, how fresh is this food? So they have to pump it with preservatives, and they have to spray it with preservatives so that it gets from point A to point B when it's shipped from so far away. So now you're getting this food that, again, you think it's like, I'm eating an avocado or I'm eating bananas, or that's great. But it's not the highest quality that you can get, which is number one. And even if that's not a priority for you, number two, it was extremely destructive to make, because you the farm was extorting nature instead of working with it and enhancing it and replenishing it. So that's industrial farming. Just to and you're welcome to kind of look into it. And again, that documentary will do a great job of just kind of explaining the facts in a very non-propaganda way, like just giving you the facts. And then whereas regenerative farming is a system of land management and animal integration as well that will work with nature and put more into what we're taking out, more into the land than we are taking out. And so just by comparison, so whereas industrial farming will do tilling, they will either do a light till where it doesn't penetrate the soil so deep, or they'll use different types of plows it basically just like puts the seeds into the ground the way that a farmer would normally. Right. And then there is no use of pesticides, herbicides, synthetic chemicals at all. They instead rely on things called cover crops, and those are basically nutrients that add biodiversity to the soil, and they give food to the crops that are actually growing. So it's a way to kind of like the rainforest has like the forest floor, like its own way, its own like leaf cover. Mm-hmm. And underneath that, there's like all these organisms that are, living and thriving. That's the idea with cover crops. So it's protecting the soil throughout, the winter and the rainy seasons. And so they also will do things like animal integration if they have animals on the farm, which is basically where kind of like pasture raised animals comes from and stuff like that. And it's called like planned grazing. And so you could have like your cows, and they'll have a specific plot of land that they allow them to graze fresh grass and hay. And they'll be there for however long, and then they will actually move them. And so while they're there out living in, the pasture, and they're eating the grass, and they're, like defecating, and like that's natural manure. And like some people might be like, oh, that's gross. But that's the way that nature right. intended it. That's how it's supposed to be happening, and there's a system for it that's already intact. And so the farmer is really just helping enhance it, keeping the animals fed, keeping them happy, keeping the soil healthy. And then the biggest thing that was a surprise to me that I had no idea, never even thought about, never even really heard of it, that regenerative farming does is naturally the soil will pull carbon out of the air and sequester it in the soil. So we hear a lot about like greenhouse gases, emissions, stuff like that, carbon dioxide. But with a regenerative farm, the soil is able to pull carbon out of the air, pull it into the soil, and use it for fuel, essentially. And so you're pulling carbon out of the air, which is extremely, obviously that's one of the main debacles of like climate change and, right. and global warming and, just preserving the planet in general. And so I think it's like, once I saw that and I read that and I learned that, I was like, how can I not support people that are right. doing this, and again, there's plenty of people across the U.S. That are either already doing this or learning about it more. I will say, again, in that documentary, they are kind of explaining that there's a lot of honest, good people, good farmers that are like maybe not familiar with it. And so it's an activist group that's going around the country basically like educating farmers and consumers and people that this is really the way that we should be doing it if we want to have more than 60 harvests left, if we want to be here more than, longer than that. So the only problem is obviously like there's obviously downsides too. It's slower production because it's natural, and we're not expediting it with any like synthetic chemicals, but easy for us though. There's many around this area. So what I've had to kind of do, and I'm digressing a little bit, but what I've tried to do over the years is when I first got started in all this, I was like, I want to help everybody. I want to change the world. I want to do all these things. And now I'm like, it's so hard to do that. So let me focus on like my community first. If we make an impact, cool, then we can expand past that. And so that's what I would say. Like, I used to worry about everybody. And my brother actually was the one. He was like, you just got to worry about you and yours right now, see what you can do better, and then expand from there. So here, would I love to see the entire U.S. go to a regenerative system? Absolutely. But that's not feasible right now, and that's not where my energy is best used right now. So right now, trying to get my community, hey, here's farmers around here that are doing it the right way. Here's why it's the right way. Feel good about supporting them and getting food from them. That's not only going to nourish you, your body, your family, but it's also going to give back to the planet and your local economy. So it's kind of like when you put all of that together, it's like a no-brainer. But yeah, I definitely looking into that stuff, you know, seeing that movie, and then also if you're interested to do the ebook, to read the second ebook, it's really all about that in depth. So people are welcome to, you know, jump on that and kind of learn more.
And I'll have a link to that down below for sure. But wow, it goes so deep. Like when you, like this morning, like I had eggs and avocado for breakfast, and like I just cut up the avocado, put it, like you don't think about like everything that goes into getting an avocado from wherever it came from, like to your plate. You just don't even think about it.
Nope.
And then when you like while you were talking, like I was like spiraling a little bit in my brain. I'm like, oh my God. Like it's just, it goes so deep.
Yes.
And there's so much to learn. And it's just wild to wrap my head around.
Yeah.
And I want to like keep learning more about it. It's so fascinating.
Right. I could see like in certain, you know, ways, in certain lights, it could be it's overwhelming because you feel like you're lifting like a veil off. And again, you're unlocking a level of consciousness. You're like, I had no idea. I didn't even think about this stuff. But it's very important to take that and then again, look at your circle, just your life. How can I just change this in my life? I don't need to like, you know, fix everything and change the entire system or think about hyperfixate on where did these grapes come from? Like I've kind of had that realization over the last year is like also hyperfixating and worrying about it too much is also unhealthy. So it's like trying to just do your best, learn more. But what I've learned is if you implement and you learn where to get, you know, the food that you like from, and now you know, okay, well now I get my meat from Kirkwood, PA, and I know that that's like an hour away and it's close. Then it's like locked for you. You're like, okay, that's where I get my meat. I'm not stressed about it. Okay, this is where I get my vegetables, my seasonal vegetables. Not stressed about it. Like you don't have to worry about all the little things. And there's obviously life is going to have nuance. So you're going to have times where you're like, I can't perfectly source this like fruit or whatever it is. But you know, through a lot of us starting to work this way and support farms this way and the local system this way, things will change. If we all do it, things will change. And then hopefully, you know, my hope is down the line, we won't have to be so, we don't have to scrutinize so much, you know, where this came from, or if I can trust that this is an accurate label or whatever it is. I just think that our path to really helping the world and our country is learning, being mindful now, and making better decisions and applying it to their life.
You've definitely made waves in the community. Like I know you said that you wanted to start local, and like you have. Your Instagram especially has brought so much awareness to it, which is why I really wanted to have you on. And then the ebook that you came out with, and like you not only preach it, but you live it and you lead by example. And I think that's so good for people to see. So your goal of, you know, screaming it from the rooftops to your community and like making waves, like you've done it and you're doing a great job at it.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's very cool to see. And that's why I really wanted to have you on too. I did want to talk about, so if people, obviously we know where to get our local food from, farmers markets, Kimmeridge and Whole Foods. Let's say someone's listening to this in Texas, like or Minnesota or Canada or anywhere, like what should they be looking up? Should they Google local farmers market? Should they Google like local grocer? Like how should they find food for them?
I think that's a great place to start. I would probably first look if there's any local markets in the area, and start there. And then when you go to the markets, you could kind of, again, like look into the vendors and see like, oh, this one farm is here. Oh, they happen to be an organic farm, or they are a regenerative farm, or whatever. Even if it's, I will say, even if it's just a local farm, that I think is very, very beneficial. Even if you can't get organic or regenerative, like just having local food, fresher food, food raised by somebody that you can talk to in real life and you can ask them real questions. That's a great place to start. But if you can't, or you don't find any farmers markets in your area, I would go to one of those websites. There's Regenerate America. You can go there. They have maps that you can, again, type in your zip code and just kind of see if there's any around you. That's a great way to do it. Also, if you just go to the regular grocery store, kind of like look into the brands that you see, like if there's a organic section, then yeah, if it says a certain brand, then maybe you buy it that day, and you don't think too much about it. That you're at least eating nourishing foods, but then like look into it and just see, okay, where does this food come from? Where is it sourced from? There's also, again, a lot of great places to buy from, like Butcher Box, and then White Oak Pastures. I don't know if you've heard of them either. They're in Georgia, and he is super. Will Harris is the basically the main head guy there, and he's been on Joe Rogan, and he's gotten a lot of exposure over the last couple years, and for good reason. He runs a multi-generational regenerative farm, pasture-raised farm, and he not only does that, but he educates a lot. So even if you like find him on Instagram, White Oak Pastures, and learn from them and see what they post. Like that's how I've like really found a lot about this stuff. It's just when you find like-minded people, and then they put you onto their resources, you're like, oh, cool. And then all of a sudden you have a huge network, and you can outsource your resources to all these people. So that's what I would say. Your best bet is probably to just look online and see what is around you first, and then you should. I mean, there's farms are everywhere. So
yeah, I feel like we would be almost ignoring like kind of an elephant in the room with prices and how much they've like gone up. Like eggs are like $12. Like,
yeah,
that's like not normal.
Yep.
So has your grocery bill, I'll say for lack of a better term, gone up since you started like eating this way, or have you just sort of like restructured it and it's like, okay, this is now an investment, and
right.
I don't go out to eat as much anymore, so that money now just goes towards a grocery bill or things like that?
Right. So it's a little bit of both, I would say. It definitely, I'm not going to say that it's dirt cheap. It's not super cheap, but at the same time, this is a substance that you are putting into your body multiple times a day, every single day. And if anything is going to impact your health more, it's food. And so again, like kind of bringing it back to our first point, like this isn't just about, social media posts and stories and like, look at my smoothie bowl. Like this is like, I want to be here a long time and I want to live a really good life. So when you put it in perspective, that definitely helps.
100%.
But again, kind of investing in highly satiating, highly nourishing foods might be a little bit more expensive, thinking like, oh yeah, this steak is now 18 and instead of like this lunch meat that was like 10 or whatever it is. But you're more satiated, so you're not snacking and you're not eating throughout the day, and you don't need as much of the little stuff that you will also be spending your money on. So you just stick to the basics, and you kind of learn like, okay, I'm gonna get this here, but then I know that the farmers market eggs are they're great quality and they're way cheaper. Like the eggs that I buy at the farmers market are like $4.50. Like, and I'm like,
Really?
People keep telling me about like egg problems. Like, I don't have any egg problems. Like, you just gotta go somewhere else, honey. Like, so yeah, no, and they're pasture raised and they're vibrant orange and they're huge, and it's Again, there's like awesome people like doing this. If we find them, then like, yeah, we're so willing to support them monetarily. So I would definitely say, yes, expect it to be a little bit more expensive, but it's more of a value thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think the number when you get to the register is going to be about the same, just without the less nourishing food. And so now you're like, okay, I have less food, but I'm still seeing the same number, but this is better for me in so many different ways. And I get it, you know? So again, do what you can, start where you can. You know, one thing we kind of stopped doing was eating out a lot. Now, don't get me wrong. I love going out for, you know, a nice meal, having a nice night out. I have a lot of friends in the restaurant business I love restaurants, but sustainably, like all the time, or doing takeout all the time, or DoorDash, or like whatever, like that. You think about that, you're like, oh, I'm sitting here and I don't feel like cooking. I'll very easily DoorDash myself a $35 meal with tip.
So true.
But I'm not paying $18 for this grass-fed steak.
So true. So true.
So it's a value system that we might have to do some internal work and kind of restructure there. But that's just be open to the process. Not going to happen overnight. And no one can tell you what you put value on, but I would encourage people to kind of go about it differently. And, you know, there's also ways to just kind of plan it out and say, you get a system. You're like, okay, well, I know I don't get my eggs from Kimberton. I get them from the market. I know that I get a lot of my meat also from the market, but I'll get, you know, the milk from Kimberton or whatever. So you kind of just like split it up and you have a system, and it's pretty sustainable that way.
So have you always liked cooking?
No.
Okay, so it's new.
It's actually funny because my family, it was like a known fact that I couldn't cook anything.
Oh my God,
I
that
definitely
is
could
so
not
funny.
Bake, especially. Like I was making, you know, the little kits that you can do, like the Annie Ann's pretzels kits or something. I got those one time, and I was like 18 or 19 and old enough to know better. And I put them in the oven, and I was like, you know what? Like, it was like 30 minutes. I'm like, these aren't baking at all. And my sister was like, it's on 180 degrees. I was like, because in the directions it said turn 180 degrees. Like at some point in the directions. But yeah,
good.
So no, I was not a cook. I was not I wouldn't even say like remotely homemaker in any way. But actually, one of the good things that came out of the pandemic was I threw myself into cooking. I actually bought HelloFresh, and that was awesome for me because, you know, I think a lot of us found like hobbies, whether it was walking or reading or whatever. But I was like, this takes me out of my head right now and into the kitchen, and I can just kind of create. And that was really fun to do. So I kind of started cooking around then, and then that gave me a good baseline for, you know, kind of venturing out and then, you know, finding my own meals and recipes and stuff.
And now you cook all the time.
All the time. Yeah.
The other day, well, not the other day. I say the other day as if I have no concept of time. But you posted sometime that you were cooking like a lamb chop. And I'm like, wow, I want to cook a lamb chop one day.
Right.
Bone in. Like, I don't know how to do it. You should, Ashley, it's so embarrassing. You should have seen me the other day. I hate cooking chicken.
Oh yeah.
But I like cooking everything else. But like chicken, I'm like terrified of it.
It aches me out too. I know.
Yeah. And I meant to get like thin cut chicken breast, but I just got like the fat, juicy ones. And I didn't like beat it or anything, so it stayed fat. I put it in the pan to cook. I'm not kidding. It was 45 minutes later. I'm like, this thing is still raw. I just threw it away. I'm like, this is just stupid. Like, I can't even do this. So lamb chop is next on my list. Yeah. And I love how you cook. You use a lot of butter.
Yes.
How do you like to cook your meat? This is selfish because I'm having steak tonight, so I just want to know, like, how would you make it?
Yes. So I guess depending, you know, how you like the temperature on the inside. Do you like it more like rare or medium?
I'm annoying. I like mine like well done.
Yeah, that's okay.
But my boyfriend likes it medium rare.
Right. Okay.
The normal way of eating steak.
So what I would do is, do you have a cast iron skillet by chance? Okay. I would heat that up, put some butter in it. You can use tallow or ghee. And again, that's like adding extra nutrients to it. So it'll absorb, like the steak will absorb it and your body will absorb it too. So, season the steak however you like. But I would sear both sides maybe 2 minutes, or it just depends how hot your stove gets, but it could be more or less than that. But sear both sides, and then actually pull it off and then put it in the oven. And that will keep a lot of like the tenderness and not dry it out.
On broil or bake?
I would do bake,
At
because
what?
broil will kind of. I mean, you could actually do broil if you're a little crunched for time too. But another thing that I actually just started doing, depends how thick the steak is, but if you don't mind like what it looks like, you can cut it in half and then it'll cook not only quicker, but it'll cook through a little bit easier, kind of like the chicken. Like, yeah, if you had been able to like cut it in the middle, it'll obviously like cut down on the thickness and the size. So I would, sear both sides, baste it in some butter and some garlic.
Yeah.
Put it in the oven, and then I know a lot of people use meat thermometers, but I will just cut a piece and be like, I just want to see what it looks like on the inside. But something with steak that a lot of people don't know is if you pull it out of the heat, let it sit for a little bit because it's still cooking on the inside. So that's a lot of people will like overcook it because it'll still look a little pink or something on the inside when it's on the pan or whatever. But if you actually like take it off, let it sit, it's still cooking. So by the time you actually go to eat it, it'll be pretty like juicy and not super,
Good to know.
dried out.
I'll send you a picture of my steak tonight.
Yes, please do.
So also because I have no concept of time, recently you posted on your Instagram an analogy that I actually talked about on this podcast because it just really resonated with me. And it was an analogy that you made about salmon. Can you say that for listeners?
Yes. So if you go to the market and you see there's farm-raised salmon and wild-caught salmon, and I know a lot of us get kind of mixed up, like, what's the difference? Like, oh, it's a farm. Isn't it, like, healthy? It's farm-raised, right? So farm-raised salmon, if they were right next to each other in the grocery store, which they don't do, by the way, they separate them for a reason because I think you'd be able to see the difference right away. But the farm-raised salmon is going to be like a pale pink. They're very like cookie cutter in shape. They most fish is also either going to be frozen or it just depends what market you go to, but it could be raw as well, just kind of like out in the meat section. But it's definitely there's a big difference where pale in color, and then you have the wild caught salmon that is like vibrant red, and it's skin's still on and skin looks really healthy, and it's just, and the shape looks totally different, right? Because it looks like an actual fillet of salmon. And so I think it's a good way to kind of look at all food and ourselves. So it's like the farm raised salmon, if you look into the way that they're raised, it kind of makes some sense. So, farm raised salmon, they're raised in these really small enclosures. So they're not out in open water, swimming around, eating what they would normally eat that's natural to their diet. There's a lot of, like parasitic diseases and stuff like that. Because when you're in these waters, you're not they're not healthy. So a lot of these fish aren't healthy. They're pumped with antibiotics. So that color and the shape and everything reflects that. When you look at the wild caught salmon, it's nice and bright and it smells good and it smells like fish and it tastes the way it's supposed to. And that is a result of their biology and their environment that they're raised in. And that's natural to who they are or what they are. They're swimming, they're eating natural diets, they're not in these tight enclosures. And so when you look, it's the same. Yes, maybe it looks like the same food, but the quality of those are so different. And so the wild caught is a great way to kind of align ourselves. Like we are wild caught, we are wild born, but we are living in these farm raised environments. We are, glued to our screens. We are, and I don't know if that's where we were going with this, but I'm going.
I like it.
But, we are eating things that are not natural to our diet. We are doing things that are not natural to our biology, like inside all day, isolated, not integrated in communities and connecting with people, and so we have that pale color. We have those illnesses. We have just a duller life, I feel like, than we would if we aligned ourselves with our biology more like the wild caught salmon, the bright and the vibrant. We eat things that we're supposed to based off of our biology, not of our ideology or what the diet culture said. We, make time for people that we love and time off of work, and we make time for movement and things that are evolutionarily healthy for humans. Maybe our like color will come back,
Absolutely. And I love that analogy. It's like, it's stuck with me ever since you posted about it. And I think about it often, very often. We mentioned peeling back the layers of things. Started with food, and then it got into local farming, and then it got into soil. Has this peeled back any other layers of like daily practices that you found through this exploration and journey of, let me start with food and just see where it takes me?
Yeah, I think, and I know I've probably said it a couple of times at this point, but again, it's opened up a level of consciousness for me, which has allowed me to dive into the other things like meditation and being more mindful. And I know that those kind of come off as like buzz phrases and terms, but being a more feeling and spiritual and connected person has definitely come from all of this. It's just, again, another layer that's been kind of integrated through just being more aware and feeling good and looking a little bit deeper into things rather than like surface level. I think in terms of like my anxiety, I think that has impacted it a lot. Obviously I still have moments where I can feel anxious or I have to talk myself down or out of things, but I don't know if that's so much my like nourishment anymore as it might be my environment and just like my, I have a high stress job and all that stuff. So, but it has helped me in those ways, and just kind of like implementing, again, time outside of work was a big thing for me when I kind of realized like, oh, this is something that I need to do if I want to keep functioning at a high level. Trying to make my life more of a balance between modern and like ancient tradition, ancient wisdom. I know that's like kind of, this sounds like silly to say,
No,
but
it doesn't, not at all.
I do think that we can find like a happy medium between the two. I think I said it before in one of my pieces. I said, we can live and coexist with technology without forgetting who we are. And so let's kind of like the farmer uses their resources to enhance nature. Let's do the same. Let's use our resources to enhance our natural state, which is just to be, we're simple creatures. We really are. In terms of what we need to survive and be happy and feel good. It's just that we add so much into it that makes it complex.
Have you ever looked into Ayurveda?
Yes. I don't know too much about it, but yeah, I
think you should look deeper into that, because it's exactly what you were saying. It's like modern day practices that are rooted in ancient practices and traditions. And it's wild how, I feel like the bridge of Ayurveda and modern day wellness practices is Andrew Huberman. I literally bring him up every 5 seconds. Yes. Like I can't stop talking about him. Like you think I'm in love with him.
Podcast,
oh my God, I die. But his whole thing obviously is that everything he talks about is backed by science. And I mentioned this on the podcast a couple weeks back, and I said to you earlier that I went on a retreat a couple weeks ago, and I learned about Ayurveda for the first time. And most of the practices from Ayurveda, I started implementing from Andrew Huberman's suggestions and science-backed things. And it's really cool how ancient practices are the modern day practice as well. And we're not connecting the two. Like there's roots to that. So I think you'd enjoy if you like look deeper into that too, if you have any interest in that. I could seriously talk here for hours and hours, but I want to definitely drive people to your ebook because you are a wealth of knowledge. You have so much passion about this topic, so much knowledge in this space, and you recently compiled it into an ebook, and your whole message was to just get people to support local. And you actually weren't even going to charge for the ebook. And thank God you are, because it's worth every single penny. So I'm going to have the link to the ebook down below, but also where can people follow you? Where can people find you? And any other resources that you want to leave with people as we end the episode.
Sure. So my Instagram is basically where I do most of the work, and you can find everything there. I have like a little bio link that you can find a lot of things that I'll post or share, but that's where the ebooks are. And on Instagram, it's Wellness Mind Body. And then as far as, resources outside of, if I find anything or share anything, like that's where it's going to be. So I'll constantly keep reverberating the message of this stuff is important, look into it. And again, my goal is really not to have people just blindly accept what I say, but to really take it, absorb it, look into it themselves, and then decide that that's something that they want to do for them in their life. But for other resources, I don't feel right not telling people. Like I've been keeping them to myself for a while, but I'm ready to put everybody on.
You're not gatekeeping.
It is hands down and by far the Weston A. Price Foundation. That is, they're on Instagram, but they don't do too much on Instagram. So I would say like looking them up online, maybe even becoming a member. It's $40 for the year, but they keep you up to date on literally everything you need to know in terms of food farming and the healing arts. So, I just learned a little bit about homeopathy drugs are on the market to be illegal right now. And I had no idea. So there's a lot that they'll keep you up to date on. They have a lot of call to actions as well. And they're always talking about farming, where you can get local food, what type of, how to prepare your body for pregnancy, like all that. It's just using all of the wise traditions of, ancient civilization and kind of, putting it in a modern way. And that would be probably the main one that I would say if anybody is looking to dive into this stuff more. That's a great resource. But I'm also going to be sharing pretty much the same stuff.
Well, that's amazing. Ashley, thank you so much for coming on today. I would love to have you back anytime. You're always welcome. And your first podcast, how'd it feel?
It was definitely, thank you so much for having me. It was very fun, and you're very easy to talk to. So I was lucky in that sense.
Well, thank you so much.